Stugotz here for ZipRecruiter. Does your business have any New Year's resolutions? Here's an important one every business should consider. Make your hiring process more efficient and effective. This year, let ZipRecruiter help. No one has done a better job of transforming how you find the right talent than they have. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. Then, ZipRecruiter actively looks for the most qualified candidates and invites them to apply. They even review every application to identify the top candidates, so you never miss a great match. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you. It finds them. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, our listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Dan. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Dan. One more time. Try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/Dan.
On Batard.
There's fascination in power rankings. In fact, I'm coming out with a power ranking for power rankings, which ESPN's NFL power ranking right now is debuting at number 3rd on my list. Right. So it's a good power ranking.
Stugotz.
Who's 2 and 1 on that list?
Well, you know,
this is where his story falls apart.
No, because it's a competing, it's a non-ESPN entity, so we don't want to air it on this
heady play
airtime.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
We'll get to Chris Sims in a second here. Guillermo, put it on the poll here at Le Batard Show on Twitter. If Tom Ricketts was the owner of the Cubs in 2007, would that have been a good rant? If Tom Ricketts was the owner of the Cubs in 2007, would that have been a good rant?
Why 2007?
Isn't that the year? I mean, that's
not the year that Sosa and McGuire went crazy. Sosa's been retired since.
When did I need Ricketts to be the owner of the Cubs?
Sosa left the Cubs in 2004.
So if Tom Ricketts was the owner of the Cubs, anywhere in the early 2000 to 2004, would that have been a good rant?
I think you needed him to be the owner during the home run chase.
Yeah,
with,
like 98.
McGuire.
All right, so if Tom Ricketts was the owner of the Cubs in 1998, would that have been a good rant? Put that on the poll. If Tom Ricketts was the owner of the Cubs in 1998, would that have been a good rant? And Greg Cote saved me, and he's right, and I should have pivoted quickly and went with the Manny Ramirez point. Because this Tom Ricketts guy, Sammy Sosa, who has done so much for the organization that Tom Ricketts grew up loving and eventually purchased in 2009, made the bid in 2007, won that bid in 2009. He won't let Sammy Sosa back into his organization, but he, under his watch, hired Manny Ramirez to be his hitting coach. I'm rattled. To be his hitting coach. Hired Manny Ramirez, who did nothing for the Cubs. Nothing. Did nothing for the Cubs. He hired him to be his hitting coach, but refuses to allow Sammy Sosa, who did everything for the Cubs, back into the organization. Kick, save, and abuse. At Le Batard Show on Twitter, who had a worse weekend? Marcus Williams or Chris Sims? 67% of the audience said Marcus Williams.
We're on number 46 this time, right?
Yes. Is Chris ready to go?
We're getting him set. He's having a very long conversation with Allison right now.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, he's set to go.
I mean, seriously, the Cubs, man. I mean, without Sammy Sosa, there might not be any Chicago Cubs. He saved the Cubs. He is the Cubs. And this guy, Ricketts, will not allow him back into the organization. Chris Sims joins us now. He did not, according to our audience, have a worse weekend than Marcus Williams. 67% of the audience says that Marcus Williams had a worse weekend than Chris Sims. Chris Sims joins us to reveal his 46th best quarterback in the NFL. How'd you experience the weekend, Chris?
Man, I thought it was an awesome weekend. 3 out of the 4 games were great, and I really enjoyed it. You know, the thing, people think like I don't like Jacksonville or something through this. You know, the point started with me saying Jacksonville was the best football team in the NFL.
Yep.
So I root for them. That was amazing. I really do. I have a man crush on Jacksonville and the way they play and how physical and all that. But it was an awesome weekend. Man, people thought I had a bad weekend. They're crazy.
Well, I mean, you got torched on Twitter. You really did. Like, people,
no. You mean all the know-nothings on Twitter torched me? Oh, my gosh. I'm so hurt by all the know-nothings on Twitter that know nothing, and they're going to tell me, okay.
Right. By the way, if you're wondering what happened to Greg Cote, there's a masseuse here, and she's walking on Greg Cote's legs right now.
Wow, that's awesome, man.
Yes.
That's double duty right there. Good for you, Greg. I'm jealous, man.
Yeah, so I mean, how does this work? Because I know Baselli came after you on Twitter. Do you care about his opinion at all? Or, like, I know you don't.
I mean, not really. Like Stugotz, like I've told you. I mean, you've heard me go on my rant about my credentials. I study this. I'm not going to let one game change me. And again, let's take into the context of the game. See, everybody looks at it and goes, "Man, they won 45-42. The quarterback must have done everything." Guys, the game was 28-7, and Blake Bortles was 7 for 14 for 83 yards. Okay,
you got to
somebody get are you guys? Maybe everybody on Twitter's got to stop tweeting and actually watch the game.
Right.
That's what you have to do. I mean, his leading receiver was T.J. Yeldon.
Yeah,
that was screen passes, swing passes behind the line of scrimmage. Now I know he threw the post down the middle, and that was a nice play. I get all that, but literally what's being lost in translation right now, and the people especially who want to hate on me, the Blake Bortles throws a 5-foot pass in front of him, and people look at me and go, "See, he's not bad." I mean, like a beach pass you would have with your kids on the beach.
Sure.
People are going, "Look, he can do that. That's pretty awesome."
You got to give him some credit.
There's my point.
But Chris, listen, I actually agree with your point, but this particular game, they didn't win despite Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles was a reason, not the reason, a reason they won that football game.
Yes. Agreed. He definitely was. Again, I don't want to make this personal on Blake Bortles. I do not feel great about myself that it has become this whole thing here.
Right.
But regardless, yes, they can win any game against anybody because they are the most talented team in football as long as he is not a disaster, as long as he doesn't mess the game up. They can beat anybody. I said, you can go back on my Bleacher Report stuff. I said on November 7th, I said, watch out for Jacksonville. They're one of the few teams in football that can go up to New England and beat New England. I said, watch out for Jacksonville in the preseason. I said, Jacksonville was stupid for scrimmaging New England in the preseason. Why? So Bill Belichick could scout their football team. So I am a believer in Jacksonville. I am a believer in my hard work of evaluating football. And, of course, I still stand by what I said. And I don't mean to just sit here and crap on Blake Bortles all the time. The whole thing started on the Dan Patrick Show, me just telling everybody. He asked me who the best team in football was, and I said, Jacksonville's the best team in football. The problem is they have the 70th best quarterback, and that's where this all blew up from.
Well, you said what you said. Here's what I said 2 years ago, Sims. What you got? Jacksonville Jaguars. In the next 5 years, they will win a Super Bowl. 2 years ago, Sims. What you got? 2 years ago. I said it 2 years before you did, Sims.
That's awesome. You are the man. Hey, listen, they've done a lot of great things with that roster, and they should have. I mean, they've had a lot of top 5 picks over the last 8 to 10 years. But like I said, I enjoy watching them. I enjoy their swagger. I enjoy their physicality. Leonard Fournette, Jalen Ramsey. I would love to know what it feels like to be those guys and be just as physically gifted as they are, because they got more super freaks on the team than any other team in football.
Hey, before you get to your 46th best quarterback in the NFL, and Blake Bortles is number 70 on your list, do the Jaguars know? Do the Jaguars know right now? Tom Coughlin, front office, head coach. Do they know right now that they're going to go in a different direction at quarterback next year? Do they know that now, Chris?
Ooh, I think they know they most likely will go in a different direction. The problem is going to be if they win a Super Bowl. And really, it's unprecedented for us to see any organization get rid of a quarterback after winning a Super Bowl, other than the ones that have retired, right, like Elway and Manning. And then the only one I can really think of off the top of my head, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but Trent Dilfer, which is a very similar situation, right? A team that just won with their defense the whole year. Yeah. And Dilfer just didn't screw the game up, made a throw from time to time, and they went on to win the Super Bowl.
Yep, that's important what Chris is saying right now, because they won a Super Bowl with Dilfer, great defense, pretty much the same team, same situation. And the next season, they went with Elvis Gerback because he was simply a better quarterback.
Yes, right, exactly. So, again, we all have put the quarterback on a pedestal, right? I want to go on my whole rant, like 40-year-old virgin when he talks about we put the female genital area on a pedestal,
don't do
right?
that.
Yeah, I won't do that. I'm just saying, but that's what we do. We go literally like they won the game, then the quarterback must have been awesome. The quarterback's amazing. Tom Brady blocks, he throws, he catches, he tackles, he does everything for the team. We're stuck in this weird thing, and if this year doesn't teach us anything, look at the 3 other quarterbacks in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You need a good football team, and then you can find a lot of quarterbacks that can advance your team, but when a team has a special quarterback and a good team and a good coaching staff, that's when you see a special team and a dynasty like New England.
Yes or no, you were mad when he completed that pass to Keelan Cole? Yes or no?
No, well, this is what happens is I'm sitting at Bleacher Report watching these games,
Yes.
and every time he completes a pass, everybody looks at me. And I'm just like, is this what we've come to? If the NFL quarterback completes the pass, we're going to look at me like, come on, get over, watch the game, shut up, stop talking to me.
Are you telling me they looked at you on the 8-yard completion, the D.D. Westbrook?
I mean, everything, because they wanted to see even the T.J. Yeldon 40-yard play. He threw the ball 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
But, they're also getting my reaction because they know it's going to be more evidence of a stat line for people to argue against me.
All right. So you have Bortles at number 70. The last time we spoke, Chase Daniel was your 47th best quarterback. We are up to – it's a big day. Everyone's excited here, okay? We're up to number 46. What do you got for us, Sims?
Number 46 is E.J. Manuel, backup quarterback, Oakland Raiders.
All right, E.J. Manuel. And if E.J. is playing quarterback for the Jaguars this past weekend, they beat the Steelers by 14?
Well, yeah, I would say that.
I think you're right, yeah.
I mean, listen, yeah, I know. Ultimately, though, it's a team sport, and I do want to give Blake Bortles credit. I'm not here to personally attack this guy every day. He did good things in the game. Of course, he ran the ball well the few times when he had a scramble out of the pocket. You saw they designed a few quarterback runs for him. I hope they do that going forward because that is his best strength. He's a big, strong, good athlete. He just has issues throwing the football.
Well, I got news for you. You're contractually obligated to bash Blake Bortles for the next 45 days, so sorry.
Yes, I am. I'm stuck with you guys for a little while longer. It's not so bad, though. I kind of like you, Stugotz.
You conveniently left out Batard. That's why I love you. See you, Chris.
See you guys. Be good. Have a good weekend.
Right,
or good week. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, weekend. We just finished.
Dan Le Batard.
You want me to get real?
Stugotz.
I'll get real.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
There's a masseuse here. Dan is not. He's out sick. But he sent the masseuse. Because as Mike pointed out in the local hour, he's trying to make this place feel like Google. Greg just had a massage. How was it?
It was interesting. She does a great job. It hurts a little bit.
Right.
It sort of walks, no pun intended, that fine line between pain and really feeling good. So definitely an interesting experience.
Well, I'm wondering, the endorsement you want if you're a masseuse is not someone to say it was interesting, right? You want them to say, I mean, listen, I'm putting you in a terrible spot because she's literally right across the hallway here, and I'm next. I'm going next. John Fogerty's going to join us, and I'm getting a massage because Greg loved Fogerty, and he's going to carry that interview, and I'm going to get a massage. But I don't think that's the way a masseuse would like one of their patients to describe the experience as interesting.
Well, here's the thing, though. I've had a few standard massages where hands and fingers are used. This is the first time I've ever had been mashed, which is a foot massage. And the leg is much more powerful than the arm. And so it was a little more, I don't want to say painful, but it was a little more vigorous than I imagined. So it was interesting in that regard, but I enjoyed the experience. Very pleasurable.
Every Tuesday we enjoy your Back in My Day, and you have a fresh one for us, huh? You did the work, even with Le Batard not here. I'm very proud of you.
How about that?
Yes. All right, let's get to it. Back in My Day.
And now it is time to take a trip down memory lane. Here's your guy, Greg Cote, with Back in My Day.
Vaping. The phrase blowing smoke is a euphemism that means trying to pretend you're more important than you are or knowing something you don't understand. People vaping are literally blowing smoke, the vapor from their electronic cigarettes. Vaping is perhaps the single greatest example of people who look like they're trying to look cool while all the rest of us look at them and go snicker, snicker, SMH. Vapors are the modern equivalent of how dorky 1950s dads looked, walking around with elaborate pipes clamped in the thin crease of their maws. I mean, who are you people kidding? What are you doing? If you're going to smoke, smoke. If you're going to quit, quit. Don't be caught in this bizarre in-between that finds you sort of, pretending to smoke? I feel like vapors are taking shortcuts like the guy who steals a Maserati emblem, tapes it to the front of his Tercel, and drives around with a beret like a king. Who's he fooling? Hey, Valentine's Day's coming up. How about you send your wife a photo of a dozen roses? Vaping is not new. The Greek historian Herodotus in 440 BC noted that the Scythians, the Eurasian people, piled cannabis onto red-hot stones and bathed in the resulting vapor. But vaping as we know it, via e-cigs, was invented by a Chinese pharmacist, Hon Lik, in 2003. Now there are some 460 brands and 7,000 flavors. People think it's a harmless alternative to smoking, but of course the FDA is investigating cases of e-cig poisoning and the lack of transparency on the chemicals in the liquid nicotine and solvents used. And the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says e-cigs are not an approved therapeutic device to help people quit smoking. Anyway, the point is, people, if you're going to smoke, do it old school. Pull a Camel or a Winston out of the pack, fire it up, suck it down, and luxuriate in the deadly haze. Acknowledge your habit. Own it. Wear it like a badge. Otherwise, you're just blowing smoke. I'm Greg Cote, and that's how it was back in my day.
Yes, that was fantastic. Put it on the poll, please. Is vaping a bizarre in-between? John Fogerty up next.
Don Batard.
You and I probably define fat slightly differently. I'm someone who sees myself naked on the regular, and I don't consider myself fat.
Most would.
Stugotz.
You think most people would consider me fat?
Yeah. People are very judgmental. Most people would consider me fat as well.
This is the Don Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
People loved you back in my day, man. That's one of my favorites. That instantly goes into to the top three for me.
Wow, thank you.
It was very, very good. Mike, you hear the story about the Warriors at the Q? Cold showers in the locker room. Hot water was working everywhere else, but LeBron turned it off in their locker room. Yeah. And yes, I'm reporting that exclusively.
LeBron himself turned it off.
Yeah. Do you have any doubt who turned off the hot water, right? I mean, he didn't actually do it, but he instructed someone to do it.
Yeah, it was Maverick.
Yeah. Exactly. Maverick is like Maverick is to LeBron what Mike is to Dan. Right. Mike, come turn on my hot water. Mike, I got no cold water.
Although the visual of LeBron James in full uniform with like a wrench somewhere.
Yes.
That is funny.
Just turning. That is a great visual. There's no doubt, right? He turned off the hot water. How about James Harden, by the way? Have you seen this story? Do you know what happened last night? It was a late game, so you probably fell asleep.
I don't, yeah.
The Clippers, Chris Paul returned to Staples Center. The Rockets played the Clippers. Clippers won the game. Blake Griffin played great. Austin Rivers was chirping on the sidelines. He's hurt. He's out for a couple of weeks. And there was obviously, if you believe the reports, there was some tension between Paul and Austin and the team with how much Austin was playing. And Chris Paul then goes on to the Rockets. Chris Paul, James Harden, and a couple of other Rocket players after the game, because Chris knows how to get to that Clipper, obviously, to the locker room. He knows, the kind of the secret ways to circumvent security and all that. They got there, knocked on the door, went inside, and tried to start a fight that they knew was never going to happen. The only reason I bring it up is James Harden. You're injured. You're trying to win a championship, and you want to go fight someone? You're injured. You haven't won a stinking thing, and all you're thinking about is defending Chris Paul, and you want to go fight the Clippers? Anyway, John Fogerty joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Greg loves John Fogerty. I love him, but I don't love him nearly as much as Greg. So Greg is going to handle this interview, and I'm going to get a massage. That's your cue to go.
That's your cue to this. We're off to a rockin' start.
Okay.
Yes. Maybe I'll stay here.
I gotta say here.
No, I didn't know where we were on. I thought we were going to a break.
So John Fogerty joins us now on the Shell Pennzoil performance.
Hold
line.
off on that massage.
Okay.
John, thank you for being here.
Yeah, you bet, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing well. Listen, the Las Vegas residency you're starting, I want to explore that for a second because Las Vegas used to be real cool for musicians back in the Rat Pack era, and then it got totally uncool, it seems, and now it's gotten cool again with Lady Gaga and Elton John and Celine Dion and yourself now. Talk me through that evolution through your eyes. Like what is it about Vegas that has become an acceptable place for somebody to perform again?
Oh, well, I think what really changed is the musicians themselves are from the rock and roll era, you know. At least that's the way I see it. And their audience is too. And rock and roll, of course, is really a live kind of music as opposed to some of the stuff that's sort of canned and comes out of a computer. So it's great to watch real musicians playing with each other and, you know, putting it over the top, you might say.
Mm-hmm. Musicians age pretty gracefully, which is a surprise because, you know, back in the day, you know, you said don't trust anybody over 30, and I'm never going to be performing when I'm 50. And now you guys, Paul McCartney, I mean, you guys are still performing and selling out arenas and big venues. What is it about music and musicians, do you think, that ages so well that allows you guys just to continue to do your thing for decade after decade?
Well, I can't speak for other people. I mean, I know that I probably felt like what you just said about, you know, rock and roll has a pretty short life. But I'm lucky. I've got a great family. My wife is wonderful and my kids, and that kind of keeps me going, keeps me young, of course, and keeps me wanting to, you know, really perform.
You formed your first band at 14, and I'm wondering, who were you listening to at the time? What influenced and shaped your sound?
Well, way back then, a lot of the blues artists or rhythm and blues artists, this is pre-rock and roll, of course, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, eventually Little Richard and Chuck Berry, you know, and we moved on into the rock and roll era with Elvis and some of the great guitar players like James Burton and Scotty Moore, Duane Eddy. So that was the Ventures. That was a big influence on me back early.
John Fogerty with us here on ESPN Radio, and you can see John as part of his residency at the Wynn Las Vegas. For tickets and information, go to winlasvegas.com. John, which song are you proudest of? Which song that you wrote, that you sung, are you proudest of?
Well, I wrote a song for my wife called Joy of My Life. I really love that song. It's not as well known as some of the big hits, but it's straight from my heart to her, and so that's why I love it.
John, I'm looking at the movie listings the other day, and I see Proud Mary. I knew nothing about what the film was about. I was hopeful that, hey, at last there's a nice docudrama about John Fogerty or about CCR, and of course I find out that it's about something much different that has nothing to do with your song, and I don't think you're real happy about that. Could you talk about the movie Proud Mary?
Well, I really don't know much about it myself, Greg. You know, I've had a really strained relationship with the publisher of my early songs, which was also the record company back in those days. And this is just another case of why songwriters and musicians have a great mistrust of, you know, the big wigs in the music industry. Somebody went off and had an idea to, you know, write a movie called Proud Mary. It has nothing to do with my song, but eventually they stuck my song in the movie. And, you know, for me, the worst part was nobody told me about it. I actually I was going to a different film during, on Christmas, actually, in one of those Cineplex things, and I happened to see the poster for Proud Mary, and, you know, I go, oh, somebody's got a movie called Proud Mary. And then I look closer, it says, Killing for the Man Every Night and Day. Now, that kind of PO'd me. That was like, wait a minute, you can't just go changing the words, to suit yourself. So that's the part that really kind of, upset me. Especially, I think I just wanted my fans to know this didn't come from me. I have nothing to do with this. In fact, I didn't know anything about it until that moment.
Well, you must look at your songs like your children in a way. I mean, you created them, and Proud Mary probably is your most famous song. So that had to hurt a little bit more, the idea that they're taking your signature work and sort of convoluting it.
Well, yeah, and Proud Mary was actually my first good song. It's a bit of a story, so I won't tell it here, but I had finally evolved to some sort of a method, and the very first thing where I got it right was Proud Mary. And so it's pretty special to me. I do want to make clear that I really have nothing against the actors in the movie or the director or, the folks that are artists, really just like me. And they're working. They're just doing their work the best they can. My issue is kind of with the big wigs and the people that sit behind closed doors and come up with these strange concepts.
John, so many famous groups last for a long time, and sometimes they fall apart and then get back together for reunion tours and such. So many Creedence Clearwater Revival fans, even now, decades later, sort of wish there had been a reunion. Why did that never happen, and why can't it happen?
Well, the people in that band just don't get along, If I could just use one example, it's a kind of a famous event where I wouldn't play with the other two at the ceremony for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in which Creedence was going to be inducted. Right. I almost said indicted. But anyway, it's because the other members had gone and made a deal with Fantasy, the old company, selling our vote, you might say. And so... which allowed the record company to do all these strange things, like make commercials out of. At that moment, it was Proud Mary that was in a oil company promotion, and it kind of ticked me off. I mean, I said, God, you guys, we had a very strict rule in our band to never do something like that, but they did anyway. And when stuff like that happens, you can't go back.
John Fogerty's on with Greg Cote right now on the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz, and you can catch John as a part of his residency at the Wynn Las Vegas. For tickets and information, go to winlasvegas.com. Earlier in the show, John, we were talking about songs that make you happy the second you hear them. It takes you to a place, and it just never fails. It makes you happy. And I think many would argue that Center Field is one of those songs because it takes them to Little League or baseball stadium. Which one of your songs, and you wrote so many great songs, both as a solo artist and with CCR, makes you the happiest when you hear it?
Actually, Center Field's a pretty good choice. It came from real life. I mean, for years, I was always saying that spring was my favorite time of the year. Baseball was just going to start. Everybody was in first place. Every team that you rooted for had new prospects and all that sort of thing. And it was all, how can I say, it was all wishful thinking before anything got tested. And so you were full of enthusiasm for the new season to begin.
John, we've appreciated having you on ESPN Radio. You can see John Fogerty, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, as part of his residency at the Wynn Las Vegas. For tickets and info, go to winlasvegas.com. John Fogerty, it's been an honor. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, fellas. Nice talking to you guys.
Dan Le Batard.
Come in here and tickle. Hurry up and tickle him till the end of the segment.
My Dr. McGillicuddy said this could be bad for my heart. Could be bad for my heart.
Stugotz.
Having a heart attack.
Tickle him more. Tickle him more. Right to the end of the segment.
Heart attack in it.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
A very fun show today. Our thanks to Greg Cote he's here every Tuesday, but he stepped up his game and his responsibilities today, and we appreciate him doing so. Dan is out with the flu, but there's a masseuse here. Our thanks to Chris Sims for joining us, Chris Mortensen as well, and John Fogerty. Now, I missed the last 5 minutes of that interview. I was getting massage. It was delightful, by the way. How did that go with Fogerty?
I thought it went well. He was pretty affable. I'd never spoken to him before, obviously, but for some reason had the misconception that he was a little gruff or hard to get along with, but he seemed fine to me.
Mike, how do you think it went?
I thought it went well. Greg's tone was a little weird during
somber?
the interview.
A
little somber.
Yeah.
When you ask questions as the third voice on the show, you usually have a little bit more pizzazz by the questions, but I guess since you were so intently focusing.
Yeah, I turned down the pizzazz knob a little bit on that.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a different animal when you're left to your own devices. I mean, it just is. It doesn't matter whether it's an interview or a show. It's just it's a different animal, right?
Yeah, I took it a little more seriously probably because I'm driving an interview, which is a rarity, so... plus, there was a lot I wanted to ask, so I had a few questions written down, and usually I'm more extemporaneous, but I thought it went pretty well.
I mean, I think you were right to make that assumption, even though he ended up being a very affable dude, just because of the history with CCR.
Yeah.
And if they haven't been able to get back together, that seems to be some sort of problem there, right?
Yes.
That whole dynamic with musicians, it's like, Simon and Garfunkel hate each other now. It's like, you wonder why people like that who have such creativity together can't coexist.
Ego, fight over stuff.
Yeah,
fight for who gets the credit.
Yeah,
I mean, Mike's right. If they can't get back together, there's a rift there. There's something going on. I mean, the Grateful Dead They got back together without the original bandmates. Jerry Garcia is dead. John Mayer is now the guy who basically it's John Mayer's band essentially. I mean, everyone's going to say it's Bob Weir, and they're right as long as he's alive. It's his band, and 3 of the original members are back. But John Mayer, so they've gotten back together with John Mayer.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yes, and Creedence can't get back together, and they're all still there. So it's kind of odd. And the only band not getting back together, like bands, there's a lot of money if you get back together and you want to do Broadway shows, you want to take a residency in Vegas, or you just want to go on tour. Mike, the Dead are making money hand over fist.
Yeah, there's a lot of money in big reunions like that. But certain bands, I don't think they'll ever get there. The White Stripes, everyone sort of laughed when they initially broke up several years ago, but Meg clearly doesn't want any part of that, so I don't think they'll ever get back
I think Pink Floyd's another one that will never get back, truly never, ever get back together. But that's a power struggle right there, right? Between Waters and Gilmour, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Roger Waters tours on his own and does very, very well. I mean, he sells out stadiums.
And Gilmour just had a very successful tour of his own.
Right.
Waters seems difficult.
Yes, he does. You're right. You are right about that. Like, if you had to guess whose fault that was.
Waters.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
So much of it is finances. I mean, how can John Fogerty not own the rights to the song Proud Mary? It's just crazy. And the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, the creative genius of the Beach Boys, doesn't tour as the Beach Boys because Mike Love, who he doesn't get along with, owns the name to the group. So it's weird.
You know what? I heard this great podcast, Young Charlie, about young Charlie Manson, and I had no idea he and the Beach Boys were so intertwined. And he's a huge part of their history. Mm-hmm. Part of their history that, who was it? Dennis? That they were living in his house? He rented a log cabin, and he never addressed it.
Well, the Beach Boys are most famous for their early surfing, girls, and cars music days, but they went through very much through a psychedelic era in the late 60s, and I think that's when they coincided with Manson.
Yeah, Charles Manson even wrote a Beach Boys song and never got proper credit for it. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That is amazing. What's the name of the podcast?
Young Charlie.
Do you think I'll ever listen to it?
No.
Writing it down. And I will throw the piece of paper that I just wrote it down on in the garbage right after the show. Let's update the polls at Le Batard Show on Twitter. Does Greg Cote sound like he still has the flu? Dan's out with the flu. Allison had it. Mike has a hint of it. I think I have it as well. It might be Mina Kimes and Greg Cote tomorrow doing the show. Who knows? But 86% of the audience said that, yes, Greg Cote does still sound like he has the flu. You do.
Thank you.
Get that checked out. Would it be fun to walk backwards for a day? Greg Cote maintains it would be fun to walk backwards for a day. 87% of the audience disagrees.
1 day.
Not fun.
1 hour?
Not fun.
Okay.
If a doctor has a big 2-week Italian vacation with the family and a patient calls in the day before the trip, will the doctor tell the patient not to come in? Because the doctor doesn't want to get sick right before vacation. 75% of the audience said yes. Have you ever, sorry about that. Have you ever heard of Jackson Brown? Ooh, what happened there? Stroke? 52% of the audience said no.
Man, really?
Yeah, I told you guys. I told you guys at the time. That was in the 9 o'clock hour, the local hour. I told you guys. No one had heard.
Was it Jackson Brown with the E at the end? Maybe?
No. It was not spelled that way.
Oh, well, that's the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Perhaps you're right.
The E is silent.
Yep. Yes. Are trees overrated? 76% of the audience said no. Is a rash running out of material? 91% of the audience said yes. Did Marcus Williams throw the game? 60% of the audience said no. Is Marcus Williams good? 73% of the audience said yes. Is Marcus Williams' career over? 77% of the audience said no. Is Marcus Williams now synonymous with losing? 51% of the audience said yes. Anyway, Greg, very, very fun show. You did a tremendous job.
You never know.
Hello, I'd like to deposit this to checking.
Fate is a fickle master.
What?
The future is uncertain.
Okay, and what's my account balance?
The horizon is cloudy. I see a long, treacherous voyage filled with great peril.
Look, can I just get a deposit slip or something?
A fortune bank teller. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I see a yellow-eyed serpent and a low APR.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.